Welcome to Built to Finish. I'm your host, Stephen Pivnik. Join me each week as we explore the journeys of audacious goal setters. This includes experienced founders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs sharing pivotal moments that propel their success. We'll also be talking with endurance athletes who push the limits of physical and mental ability. This show is brought to you by Acresis, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services to help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Built to Finish. Today's guest is a proven CEO, an accomplished author, screenwriter, director, and producer with an impressive career spanning both the IT software and services industry and the entertainment world. He's built and led teams globally, tackling transformational challenges, devising strategies, and driving results across a range of sectors. He brings a unique blend of leadership, creativity, and a sense of humor that I'm sure will make for a fascinating conversation. He is currently president at SNL Film. Nick Wilkinson, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Well, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
No, same here. So you and I have a very unique relationship. We met when your firm at the time became a vendor of my firm. And then when it came time in my company for me to fire myself, or I should say promote myself to executive chairman, I started looking for somebody to replace me. And you graciously came on board and took over the helm at my company. So definitely a unique relationship.
Yes, most definitely. And it's been never a bad day since.
I appreciate that. Tell me a little bit about the difference of working like at your previous firm before Binary Tree. You were the CEO of a private equity led company, and then you became CEO of a privately held company. What are some of the differences between the two?
Well, firstly, I'd start with saying that there's a lot of similarities. They were both companies in the IT sector. The private equity company was a services company, and Binary Tree had a significant services element. So a lot of the main blocking and tackling of the company was the same. You know, you were looking into how you managed the people, winning the business, making the utilization of the people was good, all that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of similarities. In terms of the differences in the private equity company, obviously you've got the private equity investors are very keen to monitor progress and see how things are going. There was probably more upward-facing activity that I had to do there on a more frequent basis, more metrics, more reviews, more interest in the operational aspects of the company. In the founder round, I think obviously with you having been there such a long time, you knew how the business operated. You understood what the metrics were and when the metrics were good and when they weren't, and if they weren't, what the explanations might be. So I spent less time educating you or informing you on how the business's performance, which gave me more bandwidth to focus on how to improve that and expand the company and diversify the products and add new clients and that kind of thing. So more working. I guess, I have that phrase, and you and I started to use it a lot, of working in the business and on the business. In the case of Binary Tree, I had more bandwidth to work on the business because I was spending less time working in the business that's representing it to the private equity owners.
Totally understood. So I thought that I was unique in the action of firing myself and bringing in a professional CEO. But after doing some research, I find that at 50% of the time, founders actually do what I did. So definitely not in the minority. And I can't stress to listeners enough that you're a founder of a company, especially one that you've been running for many years, and you really want to bring it to the next level with a potential acquisition in mind. Then looking for a replacement for yourself is a really good strategy to put into place. So speaking about strategies, one of the biggest things that you and I worked on was the path towards the exit or the sale of the company. What were some of the strategies that you executed to maximize the outcome of the exit?
It really came in a few times. Let's say there were three main pieces. The first one was training the company, training the people in the company, some muscle memory, I would call it, to prepare for that moment. So as you know, we instituted regular board meetings using the Accresis team as our board members, and to force the cadence and the discipline of providing a management type presentation, and getting the way in which we communicated to conform to the types of things that a potential acquirer would be listening for or what looking to see. So maturing the company in the way it presented itself and represented information, I think, was an important stage, and for making that somewhat formal, and that helped everybody prepare. It was almost like a long-winded rehearsal for the types of management meetings that we had to go through for the acquisition. Which, when you get into those management meetings, you down the process. You're expecting that something's going to happen, but there's many a slip twixt cup and lip, as they say in England, and things can go wrong at the last minute. So having everybody ready and disciplined to handle themselves well in those meetings was important. I think that the second thing was making the company as successful as possible as the company to be managed to be, the customers wanted to work with the best company in our sector. And as we weren't the biggest, that was Quest Software, but we were the best, and we were a nuisance to Quest. We kept winning business that they thought they should win. So in the end, Quest's one resort was to buy us. So we made ourselves the best in the industry, so the biggest had to buy us. That was the strategy and the execution of it. And then I think the final piece out of it was making sure that we made the company's products and its outlook as future, because companies buy stuff not because what they've known. Yes, these last month's results are important to kind of set the scale and whatever, but it's a future cash flow benefit that the companies are looking to acquire. So we had to, as we had to do something of a pivot from the legacy software portfolio to a newer software portfolio, so we could project the revenues for those products going forward. And it was those benefits that we were, or those values that we were able to get into the valuation of the company. So those would be the kind of three components. Lots of other things: hiring great people, riding through adversity, being determined to make it happen when it sometimes didn't look like it was going to, working 18 hours a day for 3 months in the middle of the pandemic, all those kind of things all went into it. But those will be the major chunks.
You bring up a lot of interesting memories. So you bring up a really good point, which I'm sure will be interesting to listeners. A lot of companies are steeped in tradition and in their legacy products.
Mm.
And what you needed to do with Binary Tree was to really pivot into a different set of capabilities and products to present ourselves as more future-proof to potential acquirers.
Yeah.
How does a leader achieve such lofty goals? Because there's so many people that within a company that have been there for 5, 10, 15, sometimes more years, that are so used to doing the things the good old way or focusing on the good old products. How do you incentivize folks to really look past that and into the future?
Well, there's a lot of academic research. There's a good book, The Innovator's Dilemma, that says how hard it is to be innovative and changing the lens inside an established organization of whatever scale, because people have got vested interests in the current. I spent a long time at a very large IT corporation, where at one point I was, in a sense, an entrepreneur in that organization, trying to get new products developed and new services offerings or whatever. And it was extremely difficult there. Binary Tree, we started to try and get the innovation on a new product range within the organization that was there when I joined, and it wasn't really getting off the ground. We were facing those same issues as well noted in the Innovator's Dilemma. The big, large product that was bringing all the revenue, that had all the attention, that basically paid all the bills, was soaking up all our bandwidth and attention. And this little new thing that we needed to get some get it off the ground just wasn't happening. So I took the very bold decision with your support and others' advice to actually bifurcate the company into two business units. So we had a mid-sized company that we completely cut the company in half. Other than the overhead functions of finance, HR, some marketing, everything else, sales, product development, product management, the development side, support, services, all went into two completely separate business units. And I remember, a very interesting 2 or 3 months when we were deciding whether people were blue or orange or whatever the colors were. We were going to divide it all up. And then the day that we announced it, you could have heard a pin drop. What? But, hindsight's a wonderful thing. And it worked. It worked. That by the time we less than 2 years later, the business unit that we set up to be the new one was bigger than the business unit that was the legacy one. And that was because people could focus. They had the ability to invest in those new products. It gave us the opportunity to hire a different skill set rather than kind of rely on the legacy product people trying to convert, and they were always going to get pulled back to go and do some maintenance job on the original product. So it really empowered the new business to grow and be successful. And ultimately, it was really that enabled us to position the company for a sale. So that one move, and then all the consequences of it, was the key to that change. I think I would encourage other entrepreneurs, founders, if you do have something that you think has got a lot of potential, you've got to find a way to give it its own little whatever greenhouse to grow in. Else it gets crowded out by the existing stuff.
Completely. And I remember like it was yesterday. I remember that meeting that you had with me and proposed this suggestion. And it was such a pivotal, point in the company's history, because as a founder, I would not be able to execute on it because there's just so much emotion that's attached to a move like literally splitting your company in half and delivering the message of this this side of the company, you're still incredibly important and very, very strategic to the company because of all the cash flow that the legacy products generate.
Yeah.
And then turning to the other half and saying, but you guys are probably, well, without saying these words, you guys are more important because you represent the future of the company. But you executed on that perfectly. And like you said, in hindsight, it paid off in spades.
Yeah, it was. It needed some good diplomacy to not have people feel like, oh, I'd been put on the I'm on death row kind of thing.
Right.
Last man here turned the lights off kind of thing. Because it was important that the legacy products continue to generate the cash that we needed to spend to grow the other ones. I think I give you a compliment, Stephen. In all of this, you were immensely collaborative and helpful, and your willingness to work in that business unit, the business unit that was with the established products, was I think key to keeping a bunch of those guys and gals happy. If Stephen's willing to roll his sleeves up and come and work in this business unit, then I'll stick it out kind of thing. I think it would have been much more difficult without your example in that case.
No, I appreciate the feedback. And I think this is like really good advice for anybody listening. If you do take the bold move of bringing in a seasoned executive and an expert CEO to run your baby, there's still plenty of opportunity to work in the business on a day-to-day basis if the need exists and if you want to do so. But when you do, like Nick said, it's going to go over really, really well with the staff, seeing that the owner is knee deep in the trenches with them. So if the opportunity presents itself, definitely try to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I would definitely commend that approach.
So you've had obviously leadership positions in a large multi-billion dollar company, in this private equity held company, and then in Binary Tree. From a hiring leaders perspective, what did you look for, throughout your career, just from a values and skill set and perspective to make sure that the team was operating optimally?
The most important thing that I was looking for in people that I hired was just the price of admission would be the sense that a person had high integrity and loyalty and was there to make that to make a contribution to the company and the team, wasn't just there for a salary or a commission check or a job. That they were passionate about making good for the company. You know, there's the phrase in such and such as good people. Well, you do sense that. You do sense that with people, especially, like me and almost like you when you've been around quite a few ghosts around the sun. You do get a sense for whether people have got good values, and those are all always critical to me. The way that they respond to their own teams. Are they managing their own teams with good leadership skills and encouragement and mentoring and bringing people forward? Do they take accountability for things? Do they say, okay, that's my department, I need to go fix that? Or are they trying to say, oh no, that was marketing, it was in that
Hmm.
blame culture of people who are always looking to blame a different department? I wouldn't tolerate. Um, we also needed people who came with a certain degree of connections and impact and industry presence. I remember we hired a couple of people out on the West Coast, because we were working a lot with Microsoft. So we had people in who'd been in that ecosystem and were in the Seattle area to have impact. So people with good connections were also always important. What else? I think those would be the kind of main things.
Okay. No, that's really good stuff to look out for, and obviously evidenced by the success you've had at Binary Tree and in previous organizations. It definitely worked. So going back to the sales process, I love to share, setbacks and potential, issues and landmines that occur during the sales process, because every entrepreneur is going to go through some of them. Can you share some of the ones that we went through with the Binary Tree sale?
Yeah, the ones that I remember gave me particular concern. One of the products had encryption in it, or could be used with encryption within it. But we weren't the providers of that encryption. That was a service that we bought in, I think, from Microsoft. But at the time we were doing the due diligence, we sent you have to have like a code inspection to by a third party, and they came back flagging this report that it had the software had encryption in it, and we were selling the product to countries around the world. I forget however many countries we'd sold this product in, hundreds, not hundreds, but tens of countries. And we didn't
Right.
have an export license for the encryption. And you were meant, according to some government regulation, we were meant to have an export license for the encryption. And I remember there was one very fraught day of panic. Oh, well, we don't have an encryption license. We don't have an export license. And the providers of the due diligence to the buyer were getting very bent out of shape about, this could torpedo the whole deal. And we had to provide the backtrack and explain that it wasn't our product. This was a service from someone else. We didn't need to export it. I remember we had to call in some expert on export controls, legal advice to get it all hosed down. I guess the moral of the story is, beware of unintended consequences. If you brag about your product saying that's encryption, maybe think about the fact that that could cause you to trip up. So sometimes, just be aware and plan for having to put out unexpected fires at times. Then I think a big lesson for early stage entrepreneurs, and I've tried to teach myself that because I am one now. Uh, Make sure you keep the paperwork straight on cap tables and shareholdings and who's had shares and who sold them and who doesn't. I won't go over all the gory details about your flights to visit some guy and messages and all the rest of it, but that was a something of a traumatic final weekend where we were chasing down all that paperwork. So keep the book straight, keep the cap table straight, If you're going to do or employee option things, make sure they're all tucked and tied, and you can save yourself a few more gray hairs at the end of the process.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough. And I remember like it was yesterday. I was driving back because I want to wait for the weekend. I was so stressed out by this. Obviously, you were knee deep in the process. Me, as the owner of the company, I was stressed out about it because it was happening, and I was looking forward to the conclusion. I was driving home from somewhere,
You were
and
up
you
in
called Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket, and driving home from that, and you called me and you asked me if I was driving. I said yes. You said, please pull over. And I'm like, oh no, if Nick wants me to pull over, this can't be good.
yeah.
So I pulled over at the next exit, and the acquirer had surfaced some paperwork that was signed with a previous equity holder of the company. Long story short, it ended up it didn't kill the deal, but it caused a little concern with the buyer, which resulted in a little bit of extra holdback. So it didn't reduce the price of the deal, but it increased the amount of the holdback, which eventually got back. But it was just unnecessary stress because, like you said, the paper, even though we had 99% of our ducks in a row from a paperwork perspective, that 1% will bite you in the butt. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I think you just can't. You just have to go into it expecting the unexpected, and just be quick to respond to it. But the more you can do it at the early stage in the company, I remind myself this. I've got 3, 4 LLCs down. I want to make sure that who I've given it to and how it's all what the EIN number is and all that kind of stuff. Just make sure I keep it all copacetic in case I ever need to refer to it all. But it's easier said than done, isn't it? Because those kind of things, you when you're in the chase and you kind of building a company and hiring people or new product, or in my case, something different now, you kind of lose focus on those things. So just go back to it every now and then.
As far as the final stages of the sales process goes, how did you address confidentiality? Like, how big was the tent in terms of the amount of people like you let into the process, and when did you choose to expand it?
So we played, and we talked about this at length, about the how much we should share and when, and we actually went for the most restricted approach that we could get away with, and still complete the due diligence. There was always the risk that the due diligence wouldn't happen. Binary Tree being a small company with a lot of people who've been there a long time is always an echo chamber for any kind of noise.
Hmm.
We didn't want to debilitate the company and have people getting unduly fretful or whatever. It's something that wasn't a fait accompli. So we shared the news about the opportunity with the management team. So those were basically my direct reports about a month before the close. And at that point, we had to have those people joining management meetings and due diligence meetings with the buyer. That on the products, on the customers, on the finances, on the organization model, etc. And then we only advised the rest of the employees on the day that the sale had closed. You can kind of feel. You can reproach yourself for that and say, well, it didn't. Could we have done it sooner? Would anybody have benefited from doing that? I don't think they would. Whatever day we'd have told him, we would have been in shock, and
Right.
they would have had weeks of fretting about it. Was it actually going to happen if we'd done it earlier? There's no way to avoid it when you're telling a company that has been founder owned, or any company really, that you're now subject to an acquisition. There's going to be surprise, shock, concern. What's happening to me? What's going to occur? And I decided that the right time to do that was when it was actually definitely going to happen, rather than alerting people to it when it was still only a possibility. So.
Yep. Nope. That's the approach we took, and it worked. But again, that's one of many approaches that a founder can take when their organization is going through this type of transaction.
And different. different CEOs, different founders will make the right choice for their employees and their relationship with their employees, and um, evaluating the, if let's say we'd been in a uh, we extended the competitive phase for longer, and there was more than one company doing the due diligence, and therefore we would guarantee, well, if one of them pulls out, we'll still get the other one, or if one of them pulls out, there's still another two. But we
Hmm.
decided much earlier on that we went single horse. We were on the one acquisition horse, and there was still, even with, as we just mentioned, there was still like hurdles in the way and little hiccups that could have caused the thing to stall, and then terrible scenario if you told people this is going to happen by then, and then it stalls, everybody's in a limbo land kind of thing. It just, and plus we had to keep running the business. We still had existing customers to serve, and projects to complete and all the rest of it. So I I don't feel any reproach about the approach you took. I think it was the right one for the company at the time.
100%. I totally agree. So you went through a really interesting pivot from, senior executive for a multi-billion dollar company to, two CEO stints for smaller companies, one private equity held, one privately held. And now you're writing, directing, and producing Hollywood films. Like, how does that happen? Tell me a little bit about that transition and how that's going.
Well, first thing, Phil, you mentioned Hollywood, and the day we're taking this, there's horrendous fires sweeping through that part of the country. So our hearts and thoughts go out to anybody who's consumed in all that, and
Yes, yes,
very,
definitely.
very harrowing scene. So the story of this, when I was in my larger corporate role, I never did any of this when I was working for Binary.
I don't think you would have time to because I know what the day in the life of your job was.
Well, so when I was in my large corporate role, I would quite often find myself writing up little anecdotes of things that I'd see, either people being silly, or people being hubristic rather, or
Mhm.
people being uh, just funny, or bad behavior moments that I saw.
Almost Dilbert like,
Yeah,
right?
almost still, but like even some of my own foibles, I didn't want to make, I was a complete saint either. I rose to almost the top of a $16 billion company, so I wasn't a baby in the wood kind of thing. Um, I would write these things, and then at one point, I must have been chatting with him to somebody, probably had had a glass of wine or beer or something, and it was suggested to me that should try and do something with these things and turn them into a book. So I noodled around with it, and turned it into a kind of form of a story, and obviously fictionalized it all and made it into a fictional corporation, and
Mhm.
and wrote this book. And there it sat on my computer for like 4 years. And then at another party, this same friend, who I will introduce by name in a minute, because they are an integral part of the story, said, "What happened to that book you wrote?" And I said, "Well, I wrote it, but I haven't done anything with it." And they said, "Well, you better do something with it. It's no good sitting on your computer, is it?" So I did a bit more research and got it edited and got a jacket made for it and whatever. And I published it. I self-published it. I didn't go and try and find a publishing company or anything like that. I published it myself, and I did some hard copies, so they put it on Amazon. I didn't invest any money in marketing or whatever, but I got back what I'd paid to do it all. It gave me a sense of satisfaction. It ticked something off on my bucket list, and
Right.
that was that. Um, then fast forward a bit further, and in another conversation with the same uh, the, person giving me the prompting, we got around to talking about, and people read the book and thought it was great, and it was, the people who read it did. So all five of them.
I'm one of them. I liked it.
Okay, that's six. So they were complimentary about the fact that it had a much more authentic take on what life in a business was like than how it's portrayed on the television or in film, all of which tends to be a little stylized, the nuances about how things actually really work are not there, because most of the people who write those things have never worked in those companies. I had the benefit of having worked in one of those companies for 20 odd years. So fast forward a little bit with some encouragement, and now I'll introduce Lisa Black, who's my producing partner, long-term family friend, lives close to me. Her daughters went to the same school as my kids. We met that way, and we've been, friends and shared school, parents, and all the rest of it for 20 odd years. She encouraged me to take the book, which she had also read, and turn it into either a film or a television series. And to this day, we haven't actually nailed down which one it's going to be. I've written it as a film. I've written it as a TV series. The book is called Snakes and Ladders. I also wrote a second one called Payday, which is the sequel. And we still intend to, at some point, make Snakes and Ladders most likely into a feature film. And at that point, to do that, I created my film company. So the SNL, my film company, which I'll show here, quick bit of plugging.
Nice.
SNL stands for Snakes and Ladders. And Snakes and Ladders is the English version of the game in America called Chutes and Ladders, the board game. Snakes and Ladders, we tried to make as the film, started to get some interest making as a film. It's, as I've learned over the past 3 or 4 years, getting into the film and television is a slow process. You have to keep at it. So when that was kind of percolating away, I wrote a second film, which again was somewhat autobiographical, which is called Oldie Boys, which is a sports-related comedy film, a soccer-related comedy film, which we put a lot of time into. It's the story of a team of old guys from here in the States who go and enter into a World Masters tournament in England, and they're underqualified underdogs, and really shouldn't be in the tournament at all. Their managers told a few fibs to get them into the tournament about how good they are, but then miraculously, the daughter of the manager, who herself is a really good soccer player, becomes the coach. And she rescues them from failure, and they go on to do much better in the tournament than they previously would have done. But I won't spoil it to say what happens in the end.
Thank you very much for sharing that script with me. For what it's worth, I loved it. It's definitely Ted Lasso meets Full Monty type of film,
That's the film.
and
Really.
I hope it gets made one day.
Yeah, so that's been on the verge of being made a couple of times. We were going to make it 2 summers ago, but the Screen Actors Guild went on strike, and that put the kibosh on it for a while. We hoped to make it this past summer, but the lead actor that we had lined up the year before, he moved on to something else, and we weren't successful in casting someone else. And that one's quite a large budget film. That's to do it justice with the locations we need. It's partially here in the US and Pennsylvania, and then most of it in the UK. We were going to shoot it all in the UK, but there's still a lot of locations. The budget I think we had with that was about a $6 to $7 million film. Now to go from to make my first feature as a $6 and $7 million film would be quite something. So we've pushed it back in the priority list because, and this is the most exciting thing, I then did a third thing, or a third feature, which we are going ahead to produce very soon. We start in February, and thank you for you helping us with it and investing in it. It's called Death on the Brandywine, and it is a whodunit mystery on the lines of Knives Out most recently, or Death on the Nile, which the title deliberately copies, or Murder on the Orient Express, or all those Agatha Christie contemporary. And it's kind of Knives Out meets House of Cards, as a long-term senator is found dead in his house at a political fundraiser, and the family think they're convinced that he's taken his own life, but his daughter doesn't believe it, and gets a friend to become the detective, and then we go through the usual machinations and end up with the big reveal at the end as to who done it. So that's that film, and we start the shoot on that in early February. In the meantime, I missed that one thing. So the Snakes and Ladders thing, in order to test drive that a little bit and prove out some of the characters, and also for me to get some experience, we made a short film version of that, which is called the Fast Track Program, which, as you recall, one of our biggest ways which we make money when we were at Binary was a thing called the Fast Track Program with our friends at Microsoft. So I thought that was a good
Yep.
title. And that was a short film we made coming over 2 years ago, and that which is a very condensed version of Snakes and Ladders, and that's been out on the festival circuit for the last 12 months or so. Been to 10 festivals in 3 continents, which is great. Had some good reviews, and served its purpose. Got me to understand the practicalities of being a director rather than all the theory that I learned and watched, and built some relationships with some people, with cast and crew. And I think it's put me in a good stead to go ahead and do Death on the Brandywine in a couple of weeks.
No, that short film, is really, really good. Great, first effort at generating something like that, and it's definitely received some great reviews and awards. Is that available for the general public to view anywhere?
So the day that we're taping this is the last day that it's the judging for a festival we put it in on. So as of tomorrow, so the kind of protocol in the film industry is if you're putting a film in festivals, you can't make it openly available to the general public.
Okay.
But I think as of today, that period is over. So the immediate answer is yes, and I will share with you a link now to Iced with the
Oh, perfect.
podcast.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
So we all know, well, hopefully we all know, since the majority of the audience are entrepreneurs, we know what the day in the life of an entrepreneur is like.
Yeah.
What is the day in the life of a film producer / director like?
That's a great question. It has a lot of similarities to being involved in the early stages of a software company. The phrase that I use is the nouns are different, but the verbs are the same. But by that I mean, if you look down the credit list of a film, which I must admit, until about 3 years ago, when the big long list came up at the end, I was quick to press the turn it off button. Now I watch it right the way through, down to the very, very last end of the crawl thing about who's gotten any kind of credit for it or whatever. And in the start of that, or after the cast's been listed, you get this list of all the people who've worked on it. And there's a UPM, and there's a best boy, and there's a gaffer, and there's crafty, and there's all these titles, all these nouns.
Don't forget the key grip, because now thanks to you, I finally know what a key grip is.
Key grip. There's the HMU department. There's this, that, and the other. There's greens. There's etc. And even in the production range, there's a line producer. There's a UPM. There's a production supervisor. There's a production coordinator. There's and all these names, and so they're what I call the nouns. And then, but the verbs, when you're getting a production together, especially like I'm doing at the moment, a kind of hybrid role of both being the producer and the director of the film, so overseeing the business side of things and the artistic side. The verbs are very similar to what you do in an early stage, well, any stage really, as a senior manager or a CEO in a company. You're selecting people, you're hiring people, you're evaluating people, you're motivating people, you're occasionally correcting people or providing leadership or guidance. You're listening, you're synthesizing, you're processing input of ideas and suggestions. You're making decisions and giving direction. You're raising money. You're spending money, you're budgeting, all those ings are pretty much the same, except the people that you're doing it with have got different job titles, and the things that they do are different. Now, I'm not saying there's a direct synergy, a direct resemblance between making a film and making a software product, but a lot of the things that you do, if you're not the one actually coding it, kind of similar. You create some intellectual property, in this case, a script. You then flesh that out with shot lists or with locations. You hire people to help you make it, and then God willing, you go out and you sell it, and you reap the rewards. The first thing you have to do is make a damn good film. With Binary Tree, we made it a damn good company. Well, it was a damn good company. We made it even better. that's what I have to go to do with film. I've made a damn good film, and then we rely on the sales and marketing team to get us a good return for it.
Different nouns, same verbs. So for all of those entrepreneurs out there, if you have an itch to create a movie one day, all you have to do is figure out what these different nouns are.
Well, so I've always been a fan of lifelong. I guess saying you've always been something lifelong is a bit, but you don't need both expressions. But I've always enjoyed learning new things and being forced to learn new things in different circumstances. And the past 2 or 3 years, I've put myself through an equivalent of a 4-year film school degree with the amount of content of material that I read, that I've watched, I've attended in terms of in-person classes. I've been on several film sets that I haven't been part of at all, just to watch and listen. I did several times when I went as a background, an extra in shows, just to get a feel of what it was like from that end of the production. So I wouldn't suggest you just try and do it without without picking up some of the skills behind it or the specifics behind it. But if you've got experience in leadership of groups of people, then it's not quite as daunting as if as if you're just kind of starting it off from scratch.
I was wondering why you agreed to be the mailman in The Wonderful Miss Maisel on the Upper West Side, but now I understand that it was just a learning experience for you.
No, I wanted to say I'd spend a couple of days living in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, to rub shoulders with the great and good up there. But the only way I could afford it was to be a mailman for a couple of days.
You did fantastic in that scene.
Thank you.
So, the filming begins in February of 25.
Yeah.
The filming is going to take about a month approximately. Is that
Yeah,
right?
it's the shoot is 20 days, so we film Monday to Friday. No plans to do any weekend working. So yeah, and February the 3rd to February the 28th. Yep.
And explain I'm fascinated by this process, and I'm sure listeners are as well.
Yeah.
So after the shooting is complete,
Yeah.
what happens then before it's generally available?
Right. So then there's what they call the post production. The shoot. Again, there's more nouns here. So the film production or film project just tends to get referred to as, it goes through a number of stages. The one of the earliest stages is development, which is basically developing a script and getting ideas about how you're going to do it, where you're going to do it, and who's going to finance it, and all that kind of stuff. Then you get into pre-production, which is the phase we're bang in the middle of now, where we go into all the. I spent all day yesterday in the main location with the arts department and the director of photography, looking about where we're going to put the camera for the different shots, and are we going to see that tree, and do we need that bush there, and all that kind of stuff. And we're hiring people. Setting, in Binary Tree's case, we had an employer of record, did the payroll. I'm just about to sign a contract to get one of those. So there's all that kind of building up to go and do the production. The production is, as I say, 4 weeks, and that is the hard charge, 12 hours a day. As we go into overtime and the SAG people get all kinds of different benefits or whatever. So 12 hours a day, preferably. We go and shoot the film. Then all that footage, as we go on, that footage is taken and uploaded by the company that's doing our post-production work for us. So the stage is post-production. And that's basically 3 phases. There's the actual editing of all that footage. So for every minute of film, every minute that you'll see in the film, the public will see in the film, there's maybe 45 minutes to an hour's worth of film that we've shot.
1 hour of work results in 1 minute of final product?
1 hour we will have had roughly speaking, we will have had about an hour's worth of activity to do that 1 minute. Because we do multiple takes from different perspectives and a big broad shot and a tighter shot and cutaways to people's reactions, all that kind of stuff. Then we take all that and we have an editor who decides with me as the director how we're going to put all that together to actually take it back down to the scenes that we want. Once that edit is done, and we're going to do some of that actually in parallel. The editor's going to do some stuff while the next week while I'm working on the next week, and I'm going to look at it the weekends. But then even after doing it that way, we'll probably be about another month or so after the end of the shoot before we have the final version of the edit. Then we do some technical stuff, conforming and color and grading, which is just to make sure that color looks consistent. When I say just, it's quite a complicated and very skilled process to make the color look consistent all the way through. A bit like you can do on your iPhone with photos, but much more sophisticated. And you can do different parts of the screen, and obviously over a long time. A lot of technical work goes into that. Then we do the sound, which is making sure that all the dialogue's right. In some cases, we have to go and re-record some dialogue with if a line was muffled or something, we didn't quite capture it correctly. So we can do some additional dialogue that we bring the actors into a studio. And there's something called Foley effects. So sometimes if you're hearing the rain or you're hearing the wind rustle or a gunshot or a dog bark, that we don't capture on the set. That's a piece of pre-recorded stuff we buy in, like a sound effect you put in. So we put all that in. Then if we're going to do any special effects, which in this film is very small amount of special effects, but we do the special effects in. So if you're seeing something on somebody's cell phone or you're seeing it on a laptop, it's unlikely that we'll have actually shot that footage by the time we're doing that scene. Because
Oh, really? Okay. So that's all put in after the fact.
because a film is very, very rarely is shot in scene order. And in our case, the scenes are all over the place because even the scenes aren't in chronological order because it's a mystery with all kinds of time shifts and flashbacks and all that kind of stuff. So you paint in those screens in the post-production. Then there's some final other technical things depending on what release platform it's going on. And then you have the final product, probably in our case, between about 2 to 3 months after we finish the shoot. So sometime in the late spring.
Okay. So it'll be completed by the late spring to be released sometime in the summer, fall.
Then we're going to sell it. We will go as ambitious as we can to the for the sales and distribution. Obviously, we all would like obviously I would like an in theater, a theatrical release, as the phrase goes. So that means it's in movie theaters, perhaps for 2 or 3 weeks. This seems to be the common way now. A few weeks in the theaters, then it goes on a streaming platform, but perhaps pay-per-view, paying to watch it on the streamer. Then maybe goes into bundled in the subscription for the streamer, and those things can go on for the years. You can keep renewing them or changing to different. You do that for a certain amount of time. So XYZ streamer will have it for this amount of time, and then when their deal's over, you sell it to a different one. So some films are still generating significant revenue streams 20 plus years after they were released.
Mm-hmm.
You sell it to airlines, obviously. You can watch the plane on airlines. So we have a specialist. We actually have a company. We don't employ a salesperson within the team. We have a specialist company that does this for us, and they will go to most likely the Cannes Film Festival will be the first one after we have it finished, and set up their tent and get us some buyers for the film. And then it becomes again very much like the binary tree kind of scenario. Is the more people you got bidding for it, the higher you can get the price. And you then have to add all the due diligence about, well, who wrote the script and who owns the script and have you done all these things signed off about where you recorded it and all the rest of it. Then you kind of do the due diligence on the film. It's not quite as comprehensive as on a company, but you still have to provide the, I'll call it the owner's manual for the film to.
Sure. This is all fascinating stuff. I mean, everybody loves and enjoys, films and movies, but very few really understand and appreciate how much work actually goes into the actual creation or the end product that we see. So thank you very much for giving us a glimpse into what that is like.
Yeah, I know. I will tell you more and correct all the things I just got wrong in another 6 weeks' time when I finish it.
I can't wait to have you back on the show so that you can do a postmortem and let us know like what went right, what went wrong, and share the success of the film, because I'm sure your entrepreneurial and business success is going to translate into a fantastic product that many audiences are going to enjoy.
Thank you. Yeah, we've already got great crew and great cast, and the cast, the cast are very excited about the project. I even had one cast member who's a very experienced actor from Royal Shakespeare Company in England asked for me to change the part so he could play it. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
That's fantastic. So, Nick, you're a wealth of knowledge, both on the business front and now on the film production front. If anybody has any questions for you on either of these topics, what is the best way for them to contact you?
I can share my email details. You can post them with the notes if you want to.
Well, that's a perfect segue into me wanting to thank you because I know how incredibly busy you are right now in the final stages of pre-production, and for you to take an hour out to do the show is really, really nice of you, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. Thanks for in having me on. It's actually been nice to just sit and chat to you and not have to scurry around doing things on the pre-production for an hour. So thank you.
You'll be back at it in 6 minutes.
I will.
For all the listeners and watchers, thank you very much for listening to this episode of Built to Finish. If you've enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe. If there's any information and tips and tricks and advice that Nick has shared that you think others would benefit from, please do forward this episode to them. Again, thank you very much for listening and watching. That's a wrap for this episode of Built to Finish. Thank you for tuning in. For show notes and more details, head over to podcast.stephenpivnik.com. Special thank you to our sponsor, Acresis, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services that help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Catch you next week.